Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive.
The podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
What if everything about your mindset creates your reality? Isn't just wrong, but is designed to keep you trapped in a cycle of self-blame?
That really sets the tone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sharp, rebellious even. Because today, look, we're not trying to find the hidden gems in self-help.
No, definitely not.
We are approaching this whole modern motivational ideology, well, not as helpful advice, but as a system. A really sophisticated, coherent system designed for, let's be blunt, behavioral control.
That's exactly it. Our mission today is to take a critical framework, think of it like a scalpel, and really dissect the core ideas, the conceptual nodes of this whole industry.
Yeah, we're putting the self-help industrial complex on the table.
We want to figure out how it's actually built. What's the architecture?
We're looking for the operating system humming beneath all the affirmations and positivity. How does all this spiritual empowering language actually work to hide mechanisms that make systemic problems look like individual failings?
Right. It takes the focus off the big picture and puts it squarely on you.
Exactly. Our goal is to map out the underlying coherence of it all. We want to trace the specific logical weaknesses, the vulnerabilities that make this ideology so powerful, so pervasive, and, frankly, quite insidious.
We want you, listening right now, to see the wires, see the gears turning behind the curtain. Okay, so let's get straight to the bedrock, the foundation. We've identified really 3 core logical fallacies that the entire motivational movement rests on.
And if these pillars are shaky, the whole thing starts to crumble.
So first up, this idea of radical self-authorship.
Yes. This is ideological ground zero, isn't it? It's the foundational myth you hear constantly. The individual is the sole architect of their reality, their destiny, their life story.
Total control.
Total control. It's pushed with all these metaphors like you have infinite potential, or, the classic, the pen is entirely in your hand.
But that's where the logic just breaks down instantly, right? As soon as it hits the real world. We're calling this the hyper-agency fallacy.
Hyper-agency fallacy. And it's maybe one of the most, intellectually dishonest parts of this whole thing.
Explain that. What is the hyper-agency fallacy, really?
It's basically the belief that your individual will, your mindset, maybe your affirmations, that these things are fundamentally more powerful than, say, macroeconomic trends, social structures, systemic forces.
So it's the idea that positive thinking can somehow overcome, massive inflation.
Or inherited poverty, structural racism, global supply chain disruptions. You name it. It pretends your internal state dictates everything externally.
It just ruthlessly deletes all the real-world constraints that actually shape our lives. It ignores class, right? Access to capital or lack thereof. Where you were born, race, gender.
And just sheer random luck. Sometimes things just happen.
Exactly. If a whole town loses its main industry to automation, this ideology doesn't point to the economic shift. No, it blames the people in the town for having the wrong mindset, for failing to pivot.
This isn't some brand new concept. It's got deep historical roots. There's a pretty direct line from this radical self-authorship back to the Protestant work ethic.
Ah, interesting. How so?
Well, the underlying idea there, theologically, was that material success, being wealthy, was seen as a sign of God's favor, of being one of the elect.
So wealth meant you were spiritually okay. Poverty meant maybe you weren't working hard enough.
Yep.
Or praying, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the modern version is basically the same, just stripped of the overt religion. Your success or failure isn't about circumstance or structure. It's reframed as a direct reflection of your inner state, your merit, your effort, or, crucially, your failure to manifest properly.
So it turns economics into a kind of personal, spiritual test.
Precisely. Which is an incredibly effective way to justify massive growing inequality, isn't it? It makes it seem natural, deserved even.
And the burden of proof always falls on the person struggling. If you're poor, stuck, struggling, it's not the system's fault. It's presented as your moral or spiritual failing. You just didn't wield that pen correctly.
Which is why it's so vital to look at philosophies that push back against this, ideas that reject this totally isolated, hyper-individual self.
Like what?
Well, think about the Buddhist concept of anatta, or no self.
Yeah.
Buddhism sees the self as inherently interconnected, transient, dependent on context. We're shaped by our environment, not separate from it.
Okay, so the opposite of the isolated author.
Right. Or look at Stoicism. A
Yeah.
huge part of Stoicism is about accepting what's external things totally outside your control instead of railing against them with sheer willpower. They understood that most of life happens outside the bounds of your personal agency.
That acceptance of limits, of external reality, it's central to these older, maybe more robust philosophies.
And it's exactly what this modern motivational ideology demands you deny. Which brings us to the second big lie. If the first lie says you're the full author, the second tells you how to control that authorship by treating your mind like it's a machine.
Okay, node 2, mindset biohacking.
The core claim here is that your consciousness, your mind, can be reprogrammed or optimized
Yeah.
or debugged, like it's just software.
Reducing psychology to code?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where the reductionist fallacy comes in hard. It's just dangerously simplistic.
How so? What does it miss?
Oh, wow. It ignores the enormous weight of the unconscious mind, for starters. Deep-seated trauma, genetics, and critically, the basic material conditions you need just for psychological stability.
Like having a safe place to live, enough food, not living in constant fear.
Yes, you can't just hack your mindset if your basic needs aren't met. Trying to reduce the human psyche to lines of code is, well, it's absurd and damaging.
So what's the power function here? Why push this computer metaphor so hard?
Oh, well, think about it. If your mind is just software, what does software always need?
Updates, bug fixes, patches, new versions.
Exactly. It creates a perpetual market. If your mind is software, it's never quite perfect, is it? It always needs the next upgrade, the next course, the next seminar, the next expensive journal promising to optimize your brainwaves.
The goalposts constantly shift. It's not about finding peace or wholeness anymore.
No. The goal is to convince you that you are perpetually outdated. You need the next product to fix the bugs in your thinking.
This is textbook therapeutic capitalism, then. Monetizing anxiety.
Absolutely. Your own feelings of inadequacy, your exhaustion, your fear of falling behind, that becomes the raw material that they package and sell back to you as the solution.
You see this everywhere. Feeling burnt out. Don't rest by this $500 biohacking course to optimize your sleep.
Right. You're literally paying to manage the exhaustion the system itself creates. It tells you failure to be productive is a personal flaw, then sells you the fix.
And again, older philosophies offer a stark contrast.
They do. Think about psychoanalysis. It respects the sheer depth and difficulty of dealing with the unconscious. With trauma, it takes years, sometimes decades, of hard work. You can't just delete trauma with a 5-minute morning mantra.
It trivializes real psychological struggle.
It does. Or consider the Taoist idea of wu-wei effortless action, moving in harmony with how things are, rather than this forceful, almost violent machine-like reprogramming the biohacker's advocate.
It's interesting how Foucault talked about biopower, how institutions push us to constantly self-optimize. This biohacking feels like the internal psychological engine of that same pressure.
That's a great connection. So the reductionist fallacy says your mind is simple code. Now the third foundational lie. This one tells you that reality itself is optional.
Right. The storytelling reality model.
The claim here is basically that limitations, suffering, even objective facts, they're all just stories we tell ourselves.
And these stories can be rewritten.
If you just have enough mental fortitude, enough belief, yes, the implication is that you can effectively narrative away material constraints.
Philosophically, this leans heavily on epistemological subjectivism, right? The idea that reality is primarily shaped by our internal consciousness, not objective facts.
Precisely. Epistemology is about how we know what we know. Subjectivism says, essentially, it's all in your head.
So let's make that practical. If I'm facing, say, eviction or dealing with a serious illness,
The ideology insists that the eviction notice, the doctor's diagnosis, these are just narratives, limited stories about scarcity or biology.
Yeah.
And if you just change the story in your head,
the material reality will magically follow.
that's the promise. But the eviction notice is still a legal document from a real system. The blood test still shows objective biological markers. So what's the real function of this belief?
It sounds like a form of gaslighting.
It is a gaslighting mechanism potentially applied on a massive scale. When real material suffering, poverty, illness, discrimination is dismissed as just a negative narrative, you're not just invalidating the person's pain.
You're also invalidating any critique of the systems that cause that pain.
Exactly. This is the core of the story over structured deception. Any argument that the system is unfair, that conditions are objectively bad, gets instantly shut down. Oh, that's just your negative vibration, or you're telling yourself a limited story.
So it keeps the focus entirely internal on your personal narrative.
Making material conditions seem secondary, almost irrelevant, compared to how you choose to perceive them. And this has a huge side effect. It discourages political or collective action. If all suffering originates inside you, why try to change the external world?
Okay, so that's the foundation. You're solely responsible, your mind is code, reality is just a story. Once that's in place, the ideology uses other tools, these secondary mechanisms, to shape behavior.
Yeah, these are more tactical. They weaponize virtues, twist emotions, all to get maximum productivity and compliance out of you.
Let's start with one that feels very current: contempt for comfort.
The hustle culture mantra. The equation is simple and brutal. Comfort equals complacency.
The moment you feel okay, stable, maybe even happy, the ideology whispers that you're stagnating, decaying, giving up.
Right, it's not just about encouraging effort. This actively pathologizes basic human needs like rest, self-care, stability. Think about the pressure to always be on, always grinding.
It makes people feel genuinely guilty for setting boundaries. Guilty for taking a vacation, for not checking emails at 10 p.m., for just wanting a steady, predictable life rather than constant, stressful growth.
And the exploitation function here is crystal clear. It serves the performance principle perfectly. It extracts maximum labor because the worker has internalized this belief that they must be constantly striving, constantly uncomfortable to be worthy.
We've all seen it, haven't we? The social media posts glorifying working while sick or taking your laptop on vacation.
Because they feel morally obligated to maximize every single second for productivity. That's the performance principle in action.
It's like asceticism, self-denial, but repurposed.
Exactly. Historically, asceticism was about detachment, maybe spiritual insight. Now, it's productive suffering for economic gain. You're not denying yourself for enlightenment. You're denying yourself sleep and peace of mind for, what, a marginal increase in quarterly profits for a company?
A company that probably sees you as entirely replaceable.
And again, contrast this with philosophies that valued moderation, like the Epicureans, aiming for ataraxia, deep tranquility, peace of mind is the highest good.
To them, seeking peace was rational.
But in today's hyper-productive climate, seeking tranquility, wanting comfort, it's framed as almost subversive, a betrayal of your potential.
Which leads right into the next mechanism if you do try to find contentment.
The moral imperative to play big.
This is the guilt trip that stops you from ever feeling like you've done enough. If you have modest goals, sustainable aspirations.
Like wanting a quiet life, financial stability, time with family, maybe a garden.
Simple things. The ideology frames that as a moral failure, a personal defect. You're playing small. You're not living up to your potential. You're somehow robbing the world of your unique greatness by choosing stability over relentless ambition.
The social function is obvious.
Yeah.
It creates an infinite dissatisfaction treadmill. You achieve one goal, make $6 amount, buy the house. And immediately the next guru, the next book, tells you that's not enough. If you don't scale to the next level, you're failing the universe somehow.
Contentment is always just over the horizon, kept out of reach.
Purposely. Because the economic benefit is huge. This mindset produces the ideal hyper-consumers and hyper-workers. Always chasing the next bigger thing, the next purchase, the next promotion.
Which perfectly feeds the endless corporate demand for growth.
It's moralized ambition. Ambition stops being a personal choice and becomes a moral duty. You are literally told you're a better, more worthy person if you pursue maximum scale, maximum impact, maximum wealth, no matter the cost to your well-being or relationships.
So you combine denying objective limits with this moral pressure for infinite growth. People are inevitably pushed towards taking huge risks.
Which is where the final control mechanism we'll cover comes in. Fear rebranding.
This one is purely about language, a semantic shift.
Taking fear, a fundamental protective emotion, honed over millennia to signal danger, and deliberately redefining it.
Redefining it as fuel.
Exactly. Fear isn't a warning signal anymore. It's just a fuel for your growth engine, something to be consumed and pushed through.
The danger there seems massive. This is semantic deception, isn't it? It encourages you to override your own protective instincts.
Profoundly dangerous. When your gut, your rational mind is screaming, this investment looks like a scam, or this work environment is toxic, or this relationship feels unsafe.
The ideology tells you, no, that's just fear, and fear is fuel. Push through it, take the leap.
You're literally trained to view your own risk assessment, your brain trying to protect you, as a personal weakness you need to conquer with bravery.
So the exploitation pattern becomes clear. People get convinced to ignore really obvious red flags.
We see it all the time. People taking huge financial risks they can't afford on shaky ventures, staying in exploitative jobs or relationships, because they've been conditioned to believe that feeling scared is just proof that something amazing is about to happen if they push past it.
When in reality, the fear was just accurate, a correct assessment of danger. The cliff edge was real.
Right. And think about the tactical tools used to reinforce this. The whole leap metaphor itself encourages impulsive action over careful planning.
Or techniques sometimes used in high-pressure seminars, like the 2 yeses protocol, getting quick agreements to build momentum before someone can really think it through.
It's all designed to bypass prudence, bypass rational assessment in favor of this isolated, forceful, courageous action, even when that action is incredibly unwise.
Okay, so we've pulled apart the foundations, the fallacies, and the tools, the control mechanisms. Now let's put it back together. What's the bigger picture? What system does all this serve?
When you synthesize all these pieces, the overarching system that emerges, well, we're calling it spiritualized neoliberalism.
That's a mouthful. Break it down.
Okay. It's a system that does two key things simultaneously. First, it mystifies material conditions using narrative. It tells you objective reality, systemic factors, they don't really matter as much as your internal story.
Takes the focus off the external world.
Right. And second, it commodifies self-improvement. It turns your inner life, your desire to be better, into a product requiring endless optimization, endless purchases. And if you fail within this system...
It's never the system's fault. It's your fault. Your spirit wasn't strong enough. Your mindset wasn't right.
Exactly. Spiritualized neoliberalism aligns the pressure on the individual perfectly with what the market system demands. Constant striving, acceptance of precarity, and self-blame for failure.
It's cheaper, isn't it? Cheaper for the system to sell someone a $20 self-help book telling them to fix their mindset than it is to provide, say, robust social safety nets or address wage stagnation.
That's a stark way to put it, but yes. Let's quickly recap the taxonomy of deception we've identified, because it shows this alignment clearly.
Okay.
Category 1, the epistemological deceptions. That's reality as narrative and story over structure. Their job is to invalidate objective conditions and dismiss systemic critique. Keep it all internal.
Got it. Category 2.
The psychological deceptions. Things like fear rebranding to override your danger signals, and guilt-based motivation to pathologize rest and contentment. This ensures you keep striving, keep complying, feeling guilty if you're not growing.
Makes sense. And category 3.
The social deceptions. This includes communal enforcement, using group pressure, like in those expensive mastermind groups, to keep everyone adhering to the ideology, and moralized ambition, which shames anyone who dares to have modest, sustainable goals.
So the system polices itself through peer pressure, too.
Very effectively. Which brings us to the crucial question, cui bono? Who benefits from all this? Let's look at the power analysis matrix.
The primary beneficiary seems unavoidable, really. It's capital.
It's
Reduced accountability. Massively reduced. If the individual is the sole author, solely responsible, then the economic structures themselves, the corporations demanding more for less, the stagnant wages, the lack of job security, they can never be blamed when individuals fail.
the hyper-agency myth shifts all blame away from structure onto the individual. It's like ideological deregulation of responsibility.
Okay, so capital is primary. Who else benefits?
Well, obviously the guru industry itself. As we said, it's a perpetual motion machine generating revenue from induced inadequacy.
Selling the updates.
Selling the updates. And, maybe just as critically, employers benefit enormously. They get a workforce conditioned to see setting boundaries, asking for fair compensation, or even just taking adequate rest as signs of personal weakness or lack of ambition.
You get compliant workers willing to endure productive suffering without questioning the system that demands it.
Exactly. And who is the casualty in all this?
It's the individual, isn't it? Overwhelmingly.
The outcome is crippling self-blame for failures that are often systemic. If you internalize the message that the pen is entirely in your hand, but your life is still a constant struggle because of factors way outside your control, the only conclusion the ideology allows is that you are fundamentally flawed, broken, defective.
And that directly leads to an erosion of critical thinking, too. If step one is dismissing structural awareness as just a negative story, you lose the ability to even diagnose the real problem.
You become unable to see the system you're trapped in. And it's important to stress, none of this is truly new. We're looking at clever repackaging of very old control patterns.
Like the spiritualized bootstrapping idea.
Right. Today's you create your reality is essentially the modern version of that old Protestant anxiety about predestination. It provides a spiritual-sounding justification for inequality. The successful feel blessed and actualized. The struggling feel morally and personally deficient.
And therapeutic capitalism.
The mindset biohacking, the constant selling of courses and tools to manage your inner state. It's the functional successor to, say, medieval religious indulgences. Instead of paying the church to ease anxiety about eternal damnation, you pay the guru to ease anxiety about your productivity, your status, your potential,
Monetizing existential dread.
turning anxiety itself into a profit center. And finally, productive suffering. The modern cult of pain is growth, the contempt for comfort. It echoes old military or monastic asceticism, but it's been repurposed.
Not for character or spirit anymore.
No, it's repurposed for the efficient extraction of labor, disguised as personal development.
Okay, so we've thoroughly deconstructed the blueprint. We see how the system works, how it's designed to make you feel perpetually inadequate and responsible for everything.
Yeah.
The big question now is, what's the way out? What does resistance look like?
How do we reclaim our thinking, our boundaries, our sense of objective reality from this onslaught?
The first step, it seems, has to be a fundamental shift in your internal foundation, moving away from this forced infinite growth mandate.
Towards something more like harmony, stability, and an acceptance of realistic limits.
Which means, first and foremost, consciously rejecting hyperagency.
Yes. You have to embrace structural awareness. Prioritize understanding the context you're in over constantly trying to optimize yourself within that context. The question shifts from what's wrong with me to, is this a personal failing? Or is this the predictable result of the system I'm operating in?
Understanding the context becomes more powerful than just tweaking the self.
Absolutely.
Right.
Then we need to embrace prudent fear. Reclaim fear not as fuel, but as what it is. Protective intelligence. Legitimate risk assessment.
So if taking that huge, unresearched financial leap feels terrifying...
That's not weakness. That's your brain functioning correctly, signaling danger. When the ideology tells you to ignore red flags at work or in a relationship, remember, prudence, caution, critical assessment, that is radical resistance in this context.
And maybe the most countercultural step, value contentment as radical resistance.
Yes. Choosing reasonable limits. Prioritizing stability. Being able to say, this is enough. This is a direct political act against a system that demands infinite, unsustainable growth and dissatisfaction.
Contentment becomes sabotage. Sabotage of the moralized ambition machine.
Beautifully put. Okay, so if the self-help ideology is the old, faulty operating system, what's the alternative? What philosophical tools can we use to build a healthier internal framework?
We touched on some earlier. Let's revisit them as foundations for resistance.
Okay, first, Stoicism. It offers such a clean separation. Focus your energy only on what's truly yours to control your judgments, your intentions, your efforts. Everything else, the economy, other people's actions, luck, accept it as external.
Don't waste energy fighting what you can't control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It frees up so much mental energy currently spent in that delusional struggle against reality. Pair that with the psychological freedom offered by Buddhism.
Specific.
Practices like non-attachment to outcomes, acknowledging impermanence. That infinite dissatisfaction treadmill only works if you're desperately clinging to specific, fixed results, the $1 million, the perfect job title.
If you accept that things change, that outcomes aren't guaranteed.
The anxiety has less grip. You can still act, still strive, but without that crippling weight of needing things to be exactly a certain way. Then add the fluidity of Taoism.
Seeking harmony with natural flow away.
Right. This isn't about being passive. It's about effortless action that moves with the current of reality, not straining violently against it. Reject the high-pressure leap for actions that respect natural timing, circumstance, and sustainable effort.
And finally, a philosophy that directly counters the intense individualism.
We could look towards philosophical anarchism, not in the sense of chaos, but in its emphasis on mutual aid and collective action, shifting focus away from the isolated competitive struggle for individual optimization.
Towards recognizing shared problems and seeking collaborative, solidarity-based solutions. It's the antidote to the isolating nature of the self-help trap. #TagSeeks. Conclusion.
So let's bring it all together. What's the key takeaway from this deep dive? The modern self-help narrative, despite its empowering language, isn't just a collection of tips. It functions as an architecture of control.
Yeah, a blueprint specifically designed to make you, the individual, feel like the source of the problem, especially when the real problems are often structural, systemic.
It's the perfect ideology for an era of widening inequality, really. It promises boundless personal freedom while actually tightening control, neatly shifting responsibility away from powerful systems and onto the shoulders of individuals trying to navigate them.
So the path to genuine freedom, maybe counterintuitively, lies in rejecting that constant, exhausting demand to be infinitely optimized, infinitely growing, perpetually dissatisfied.
Exactly. It lies in finding radical value in setting limits, seeking stability, and cultivating the ability to see the world around you clearly, objectively, instead of only ever looking inward at your own mindset as the supposed source of all good and ill.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know, so here's our question for you. So we've torn apart the self-help industry's greatest lie. Now the real question is, what is the one idea you've held onto that you're finally ready to put on the chopping block?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical.
Thank you for joining us.